Hi everyone and welcome to the new video. In the previous video I explained how to configure the Meshtastic Heltec V4 board, and now we are ready to do some real tests. In this video I will show how I can actually use this board, and I will perform two of the most important tests, the range and the battery life. As a reminder for those who missed the first video, Meshtastic is an open source and off-grid decentralized network. As its name suggests, Meshtastic is based on mesh technology, and nodes can receive the messages and transmit them further. And obviously the range and the battery life are the most important parameters we want to know. It can be fun to see it, let's get into it. Okay, let's start with the battery life. Interestingly, an excellent battery life is one of the features that is promoted on the meshtastic.org website, and I've had a doubt that my lab power supply will be able to detect this small power consumption. But surprisingly it was not the case, and the power consumption was not really small. Anyway, let's connect the board and see how it works. The power connector is included with the board, so I am just directly connecting it to a power supply, and let's turn it on. According to the documentation, the board can work with 1S lithium battery, so I set the voltage to about 3.8 volts and now it boots up. And as we can see, the power consumption is not really small. When the board is working, the power consumption is about 140 milliamps. And we should also keep in mind that this is the idle mode, the board is only receiving the data. And now we can see a peak when the actual transmission is going on. And we can clearly see on the screen that during this peak, the actual consumption is almost 0.8 amps, which is generally a lot. So as I can guess, the real battery life will drastically depend on number of messages you send. I was also curious if turning off display really decreases the power consumption, but it turned out that it's really not significant, and on my power supply I can barely see it. So we can set the display off mode in the settings, but it will not drastically help. And now I will do a simple test. I will connect a lithium battery to my board and I will see how long it will run. So this is my Heltec board and this is the battery I found. This is a good lithium battery, and I read somewhere that the same batteries were used in the Tesla cars, but maybe it's a city legend. So I will insert the battery and will just keep the board running. Of course I must be careful with the polarity. If I insert the battery wrong way, I can damage the board. When the board is running, it sends the telemetry data, which also includes the battery voltage. And interestingly, you can also see it remotely in the app, so you don't need to see it on the screen. So I will just keep the board running, and I even don't need to touch this. I can see the values on the Android app. And interestingly, you can not only see the current values, the app also saves the data to the telemetry log. And now I am turning the board on. As we can see, it is starting and the initial voltage is more than 4 volts. So I will keep it running and we'll check the log later. Okay, with the magic of the video we can see the results right now. So I was keeping the board running and it turned out that the battery life was about 25 hours. I connected it in the evening, it was about 10 o'clock in the evening, and the next day about 11 o'clock the board was completely dead, so it was not running anymore. So in my opinion the battery life is not exceptional. But on the other side, 25 hours is good enough for the full day. So for example, if you're going to the hike, you can use it for the whole day. And if you are going for more than one day, you will definitely have a power supply anyway. So this battery life is in my opinion not exceptional, but it is also not terrible, it's acceptable. And of course I use the small battery. If you want a longer battery life, you can use a bigger battery. And now let's go forward and let's make a range test. Okay, let's do a range test. Generally the process is simple and the range test functionality is already included in the Meshtastic app, but there are some settings that can be tricky, so let's see how it works. To do a range test in Meshtastic, we need to configure 4 parameters. You need to set the channel accuracy, we need to set the location update interval, we need to enable a range test on both boards, and the last but not least, we need to set a sending interval for the board that will work as a transmitter. And now let's do all this step by step. Obviously for the range test we need at least 2 boards. And the top one is a Heltec board. As we can see it has a GPS, so I will take it with me. And the bottom one is the T-beam board. I will use it at home so it has a fixed position. And the first thing I need to do is to go to the channel settings and to increase the accuracy. Because by default the accuracy is very low for privacy reason and it is about 2 miles. And obviously we need to make this value smaller because 2 miles circle is too large to determine the accuracy. Just keep in mind that the node position is shared within the network so other people can also see it, but the node is anonymous so I don't think it's a problem. And you can select a value between 1 or 300 feet, it's good enough. So I need to connect to the node and I need to change these settings and then I can do it on the second node. For the second node that I will take with me, I can also enable the precise location. It will make the accuracy better. And as we can see, the first node has a fixed position, it is okay and I will keep it at home. So this was the first important parameter and now we're going to the second one. I need to open the range test config and I need to enable it for this board. And here I will also set the send message interval to 1 minute. So here the logic is simple, the board at the bottom I will keep at home and it will be sending messages every minute, and the Heltec board I will take with me and it will work as a receiver. And now it is time to configure the Heltec board. First, as I explained before, I need to configure the channel accuracy. I can set the accuracy in feet or I can set the precise location, it is also fine. Then I open the GPS settings and I set the update interval to 1 minute so my track will be more accurate. And then I need to enable the range test. The thing is that the range test packets are ignored by default so it doesn't disturb other people. So to receive the range test packets I need to enable this setting. And for this Heltec board I will not set the sender interval so this board will work as a receiver only. And after changing the range test values, the board will be automatically restarted. As a reminder, we need to enable the range test on both boards. One board will be a transmitter and it will send messages every minute, and the second board will be a receiver. Or if you want, you can use more than 2 boards. This solution is actually flexible. For example, you can configure 2 boards with different antennas to transmit, and then you can compare how many packages you get from each of the boards. And if everything was done correctly, in the long fast channel you will see sequential messages, the numbers will be out incremented. Here we can see the messages from my previous test. And now I will keep the T-beam board at home and I will take the Heltec board with me and go for a walk. It is also important to have the Android phone with you because this Android app will work as a data logger. While I'm using the board, the Meshtastic app will save all range test packets and it will also save my position log. And now I will do the test and I will show how can I use this data. Okay, now I'm ready for the test. I will keep a T-beam board at the window as a transmitter. As I explained before, it will send a message every minute. And the Heltec V4 board I will take with me and the Android app will be saving the log in the memory. And because of the magic of the video, you will see the result right now. So I'm opening the Meshtastic app, I'm going to settings. And here I can export the range test packets. For some weird reason, I don't know why, all packets were exported, but this is not a problem, the number is not too big. For example, if you configured the board to send the packets every minute, you will have about 60 packets per hour. So I just cleaned the CSV manually, or you can do it in Python or in any other language. For example, if you are using bash, this is the command to clean the file. And if everything was done correctly, the output should look like this. And now we have the fun part. We go to maps, we create a new map. As we can see, we can import the layer from a CSV. And this is the file I created. Here I am selecting receiver latitude and I will use it obviously as a latitude. I am selecting longitude and I am using as a longitude, of course. And as the last parameter, I can select a timestamp or I can select signal to noise ratio. It's up to us, or we can select a distance. As a title, I will use signal to noise ratio. And here we are. I live in Amsterdam. I was walking in this area. So this is the coordinates of the receiver, obviously, not of the transmitter. I was walking down the street. At every marker, we can see coordinates and the data. As we can see, the maximum distance between points is about 1.4 kilometers. So technically in the city, the range is not so big. Of course, in the open area, the distance will be higher, but it is still interesting to see how it works. I was walking and the packages were receiving every minute. Of course, you can test it with 2 boards, or you can test it with more boards. For example, you can take 2 boards with different antennas, or you can configure 2 boards, the transmitters with different antennas. When the test is done, you should disable the range test on the transmitter because you don't need it anymore. And now let's make a short summary and figure out if it makes sense to buy this board or not. This is the comparison table from the official website, and as we can see, there are some good improvements. This board has more internal flash RAM. For Meshtastic, it can be useful if you save the logs locally. For example, you can enable saving the CSV in the flash RAM. The second improvement is a solar input, so you can use it as a solar node if you want to connect a solar panel. Also, as we saw in the video, the board has a GPS port that can be used. Another good improvement is the higher transmit power. As we can see on this board, it is 28 dBm, and on the previous board it was 21. With the higher output power, when you send a message, you should get a better range. The main disadvantage I see is the power consumption. As we saw in the video, the battery life is not so good, and if it is critical, you can find a board with a longer battery life. But generally, even with a small battery, 1 day is not a big problem, because if you are traveling for a longer time, you will need a power supply anyway for other devices. And how can you actually use this board? First and obvious use case is a DIY and experimentation. You can test a mesh network, you can send and receive messages, you can test different antennas, transmitters. This is fun to do it if you enjoy stuff like this. The second use case is an off-grid communication. For example, if you travel with 2 cars in the middle of nowhere, you can use a Meshtastic board in each car to exchange messages between teams, and it can be a good solution for that. The Meshtastic app is easy to use, it doesn't require any specific training, and it works like WhatsApp or Telegram, so everyone can use it. And the third interesting use case is using a Meshtastic board as a radio modem. Meshtastic has a Python SDK, so you can connect the board to the Raspberry Pi or to a different sensor. So in theory, if your sensor is a bit far for Wi-Fi, you can use a LoRa network to send and receive messages. It is also an interesting use case. Also, because it is a mesh network, the nodes can forward messages from one to another. It is interesting to test. If you want to know more, write in the comments below and maybe I will make a separate video. And that is it for this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something new. Press like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more videos like this. And if you want to see a review of the specific Meshtastic hardware, write in the comments below and maybe I will make a separate video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.